The night they threw me out of my husband's family home, the sky felt heavier than my heart. And yet somehow, I knew something greater was waiting on the other side of that darkness. Their voices echoed behind me accusing, cold, convinced I was worth nothing without their son. My suitcase scraped the marble floor as the door slammed shut, sealing the end of a life I once begged to belong to. I remember standing on that driveway, barefoot, trembling, and painfully aware that I was suddenly alone. But in that loneliness, something fierce stirred inside me, something I had forgotten existed. It was the moment my rebirth began. I had married Adam for love, not luxury, and certainly not the cruel whispers of his mother who believed I could never rise to their level. They tolerated me while he was alive, but after his accident, they treated me like a stain they needed to scrub out. They believed I had no power, no money, and no family name strong enough to protect me. Little did they know that Adam, before his death, quietly transferred his shares in his tech company to me. His faith in me became the armor they didn't know I possessed. And the irony, his family only realized it when the lawyers called me the majority shareholder. The very next morning, the same people who had thrown me out hours earlier were in panic. They sent message after message, pretending concern, pretending regret, pretending they hadn't shoved me into the night like a stranger. But the lawyers confirmed that my name alone held the voting power. My heart didn't celebrate. It shook. I wasn't built for boardrooms, power, or corporate storms. But Adam had believed I could carry his legacy with more integrity than anyone he knew. That belief became the only thing that kept me from collapsing. I rented a small apartment, barely furnished, yet peaceful in a way their mansion had never been. The first night there, I cried into the silence not because I was weak, but because everything in my life had shifted too fast. My husband was gone. My home was gone. My identity felt shattered. But grief slowly carved space for something else. Determination. If they had tried to break me, I would build myself taller than they ever imagined. The first board meeting was a battlefield disguised under polished floors and expensive suits. They stared at me like an intruder, a nobody who accidentally stumbled into the world of giants. But I sat straight, Adam's old leather notebook clutched in my hand, filled with his ideas and dreams. I spoke with the voice he once admired, steady but trembling underneath. When I finished, silence filled the room, not dismissive, but stunned. In that moment, I realized I was more capable than the version of me they had always belittled. With time, the shares that once frightened me became the backbone of my transformation. I returned to school, studied business strategy, and worked with mentors who respected my grit. Slowly, I began shaping the company into a place where innovation mattered more than last names. Whenever fear crept in, I reread Adam's words. You'll change everything, even if they can't see it yet. His faith guided every small victory, reminding me that power meant responsibility, not revenge. Yet the family kept trying to regain control, using manipulation, guilt, and eventually lawsuits. They painted me as the undeserving widow, trying to steal what wasn't mine. But every attempt only strengthened my resolve. My lawyer uncovered years of financial manipulation within the family, patterns Adam had suspected, but never confronted. Instead of crumbling, I rose, layer by layer, refusing to let their bitterness dictate my path. I wasn't fighting for a throne. I was fighting for my dignity. The day the court ruled in my favor, I didn't celebrate with champagne or lavish parties. I sat quietly in my apartment, staring at the wall as tears ran freely. Not for winning, but for finally releasing the chains they'd wrapped around my heart. I had carried too much pain for too long. Their power over me evaporated, and in its place, a strange peace settled. It was the first time I truly felt free since Adam's death. As months passed, I learned to navigate my new world of wealth and influence slowly, thoughtfully, without losing myself. I upgraded my lifestyle not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. A penthouse overlooking the city replaced the tiny apartment. A team of professionals guided me through investments, philanthropy, and expansion. Yet every night, I reminded myself of the barefoot woman standing in the cold driveway, and I promised never to become like those who hurt her. One evening, after a charity gala supporting young widows, I returned home and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights glimmered below like 1,000 tiny victories. I whispered a thank you to Adam. His love had turned into the wings I now soared with. But beyond my gratitude, I felt something even more powerful: pride. I had survived the fire they pushed me into, and instead of burning, I emerged forged in gold. As the company expanded globally, people began recognizing me for my leadership instead of my loss. Interviews, magazine covers, keynote speeches, all celebrating the woman who rose from ashes. Others tried to bury her under, but I stayed grounded, always remembering that titles could vanish, but character was permanent. My success wasn't a weapon. It was a torch for others lost in their own darkness. If I could rise, so could they. One day, I encountered Adam's brother at a conference. He avoided my eyes at first, guilt written across his face. When he finally approached me, his voice shook as he apologized for everything: the cruelty, the greed, the lies. For a moment, the old wounds opened slightly, but instead of bitterness, I felt clarity. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing them. It was about freeing myself from their shadows. So I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. That moment marked the final closing of a chapter one had long carried. The pain, the exile, the humiliation, they became the threads that wove my strength. Instead of being defined by their rejection, I became defined by my resilience. I realized then that God often removes you from places that no longer deserve you. Sometimes heartbreak is the doorway to destiny. Sometimes being thrown out is the universe pulling you toward your rightful throne. The years that followed were filled with accomplishments Adam would have celebrated endlessly. New tech hubs, scholarships for young women, breakthrough inventions. Each achievement felt like honoring his legacy. The world didn't just see me as a widow anymore. They saw me as a leader with vision. And somewhere along the way, I began to rediscover joy, laughter, and the possibility of loving again. Not to replace Adam, but to expand the life he helped me step into. Luxury became part of my life, but not the part that defined it. The private jets, the diamonds, the penthouses, all of it felt like chapters in a story I never expected to write. But the true luxury was waking up every morning without fear, without drowning in sorrow, without shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. My wealth bought comfort, yes, but my journey bought courage. And courage was worth far more than millions. There were nights I still visited the old neighborhood where Adam and I first lived together. I'd sit in my car and remember the days we dreamed small dreams that eventually became world-changing realities. Sometimes I imagined him sitting beside me, smiling that proud, quiet smile. In those moments, I realized I wasn't just living for myself, I was living for both of us. His belief in me had outlived him, and that was the most valuable inheritance of all. As my influence grew, I built an organization dedicated to helping women thrown out, abandoned, or underestimated just like I had been. We provided housing, training, counseling, and legal support. Watching those women rise felt like witnessing my own rebirth again and again. Each success story healed a small part of my own scars. And for the first time, my pain had purpose. My journey wasn't just survival, it was transformation. Years after the night they cast me out, I returned to that mansion not to reclaim anything, but to close the circle. I stood at the same driveway, wearing confidence like armor, no longer the trembling widow they once dismissed. The family watched me with a mixture of awe and regret, realizing the woman they tried to break had become untouchable. I didn't come to boast. I came to show them what grace looked like. And grace, I learned, is the quietest form of power. Walking away from that house felt like stepping out of an old skin. I no longer carried the weight of their rejection. I no longer needed their acceptance. Everything I had achieved, every victory, every step into the world of power and luxury had been earned through faith, resilience, and relentless courage. And though Adam wasn't beside me, I felt him in the strength I carried. Love had not left me. It had transformed me. Today, when people hear my story, they often marvel at the $47 million shares that changed my life. But the truth is, the money wasn't the miracle. The miracle was discovering the woman I had always been beneath the fear. A woman capable of building empires, healing hearts, and rising even when pushed into darkness. I didn't need validation from those who underestimated me. I became my own validation, my own rescue, my own light. Power and luxury may shape the world around me, but they do not define my soul. The real richness lies in knowing I survived what was meant to destroy me, in learning to forgive without forgetting, in choosing growth over bitterness, in rebuilding when everything fell apart. My story is not about revenge, it's about rebirth. And rebirth, I've learned, is the most beautiful form of triumph.